Oh my goodness, I am 4 minutes late. My absolute apologies. Welcome to Mentorship Monday. Welcome. I am just going to give it a couple of seconds so that we can say hellos to a few people. Lady Atli, hello to you. Sane and Sandile and Huiti and Bali and Styles by Huiti. I think that's the same person. Trudy, hello to you as well. Oli, Menzi, Lungstar, the digital guru. Now that's the first time name that I haven't seen. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome. My apologies. I've been running late. I am trying to be superwoman. I was putting bones, amatamba, on the pressure cooker very quickly before I came back to sit down. And so just ran a few minutes late. But yeah, trying to do it all. Hello Miranda, hello Sposa, Doms as well. Guys, I'm so excited to talk to you about my experience. And then as I was preparing to talk about this experience, I realized there's just no way I'm going to do justice to this thing in 1 hour. So I'm literally just going to choose a few things. Hi Mbali, you owe me a visit because I heard you in Joburg. Anyway, yeah, I'm just going to highlight a few things because I just think I'm just not going to get through everything. So let me first, for those who've just joined and who have no idea what I'm on about, thanks Kwitsi for that. So a few of you might know that I made it into something called the International Women's Forum, IWF, and part of the experience of IWF is that you spend a bit of time in the first leg is in different parts of the world, and for me it was in Detroit in the US last year. And then the second part of it was at INSEAD in France. And then the last part was at Harvard Business School. So to those who are saying, but aren't you at Harvard? Guys, Harvard Business School runs programs that last a day, 2 days, a week, a year, 2-year MBA programs. So our program was a full week and now I am back. So just got back from Harvard at the beginning of this week. No, at the beginning of last week. So we were gone for 10 days. Rory joined me in Boston, but I was gone for 10 days for that particular program. What I wanted to talk to you guys and to share with you guys today is some of the stuff that just absolutely moved me. I can't compress 10 days into an hour, but I thought I would just share some of the stuff that resonated with me. And yes, I was working earlier on today, hence the face and the makeup and the whatnot. But why not do a nice live with a nice face on while we're at it? So let me start off with saying that one of the things that they do as part of the program. Oh, let me first start with the disclaimer. This disclaimer is not me speaking on behalf of Harvard. Please, it's not me speaking on behalf of the International Women's Forum. This is just me sharing my personal experience and some of the things that I've been moved by. I'm sharing this with friends and family, and those are you guys that I consider friends and family. So I'm not a spokesperson for the program. I'm not trying to promote the program in any way. I'm just sharing with you things that move me, and because that's just the way I'm wired. If I learn something amazing, I want to share it with everyone because why not, right? So one of the things that happens as part of the process when you arrive at Harvard is that you get appointed a board of advisors, right? It's a BOA. So essentially what a board of advisors is people who are going to help you think through one of the biggest challenges that you might be having, especially in the professional space. And I'm not going to talk about the challenge that I put to them to help me think through, but what I do want to talk about is the process and what a powerful tool it is. I think it was quite interesting that they didn't give us an opportunity to choose who we wanted on our board of advisors. So remember, there's 40 women from different parts of the world: South Africa, Pakistan, Jordan, the US, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, you name it. I mean, it's obviously not fully inclusive of the world, but a fairly diverse group. And we've been journeying together for close to a year. And suddenly you get told on the first day that you arrive on the Harvard leg that, oh, by the way, this is your board of advisors. And I thought it was interesting that they didn't let us choose our board of advisors. And I think it was really powerful because I think it helped to strip out whatever biases we might have had. And I was so pleased to land with two ladies that, to be honest, I don't think I would have gravitated towards naturally because I think our worlds are so different. But having had those two ladies in particular was actually probably one of the most powerful things for me because they brought such a different lens to my work and the way I think about my work, and were able to really to push me to think about how I do the work that I do, and brought different models and ways of doing things that I didn't think about. So my takeaway from there is, why don't we have boards of advisors for different things that we're going through? So I think there should be a board of advisors professionally, which I have now, but also just a board of advisors personally. You know, I think people who can hold your account to the things that you speak of and the dreams that you articulate and the things that you say you're going to do. And people are always going to be reminding you of the promises you've made to yourself, not afraid to give you feedback, not afraid to ask you hard questions, and not afraid to call you out when they think that you're missing the boat a little bit. So that is one process thing that I wanted to share, and I really hope that it's something that you guys find as powerful as I found it. And by the way, the board of advisors is really small. It's like 4 of us, right? And I think that's quite that was quite powerful. I wanted to share a couple of things on a personal level that moved me. So one of the professors said, and this was about how, like, your leadership style and how you show up as a leader. And he said, his name is Thomas DeLong, Professor Thomas DeLong, and he said, leadership is not about how people experience you. Leadership is about how people experience themselves when they're being led by you. And I just was absolutely moved by that, because I think for the longest time, the teaching has been about being self-aware so that you are more conscious of how people experience you as a leader. And this idea that we've potentially missed the entire syllabus by focusing on yourself as a leader, but rather what we should be doing as leaders is thinking about how do we create they call them mountain peak moments. So moments where people feel like they're at the absolute top of their mountain and they've achieved something great. How do we get people to experience themselves in that way increasingly, just because they're being led by you? And I thought that was super powerful, and something for me to think about in terms of how I lead in the different spaces. So I lead a team, of course, but also I have a co-leadership role in my family. I lead my clients in a lot of ways. And so I thought that was really, really, really powerful. I've got my notes here because I was so scared I was going to forget stuff. And then there was another professor. Her name is Professor Nancy Kane, and she spoke about how ordinary people become extraordinary leaders. And her entire session was trying to help us understand what we've heard before, that leaders are made, leaders are not born. But the way she went about it is to try and show us that we don't have to be extraordinary to be extraordinary leaders, and that actually really impactful leaders are ordinary people who are able to rise in a moment of crisis to the invitation to lead. Right? So she says one of the first things that they must believe is that in order for you to be a really effective leader is to first believe that you can do better. Because what leaders do is that they realize that the moment that's come knocking requires them to do better than what they had been doing before. And if you don't have that ingrained in you, like wired into your DNA, that you can always do better than what you've seen, than what you've been exposed to, that you have the agency to bring about something better for yourself and for others, the likelihood that when your leadership moment comes knocking, that you're going to be able to respond to that leadership moment is really slim. And I thought that was just so, so powerful. The simple belief of I can do better. Not better than this person or the next person, but I can do better than what I've seen myself do before. And because of that, Extraordinary leaders then always put in a whole lot more work than the average person. They are open to outworking anyone around any challenge, because they always know that behind the corner of working hard is the realization and the fulfillment of the belief that I can do better. The second thing she spoke about is that when the moment of leadership comes, they're not just in, they're all in. And I just thought this was so powerful, because it made me think about certain people that I have a huge respect for during this election period, who didn't sit on the sidelines and talk about what was wrong with the country, but they went all in. Like they put themselves, their families, their livelihoods on the line, and were all in. And I thought that was an interesting one, because the thing that keeps us just in, not all in, just in, is self-preservation. So fear of, what if I step into this thing and give it my all? Will it be able to sustain me? Will I be able to sustain my life? What about money? What about relationships? And when you're all in fact, none of those questions actually really matter, because you are so aligned to the mission of what it is that needs to be done, that there is no other alternative other than being all in, right? There's a saying, and I always forget this guy, he says, sometimes in life there comes a moment where you've got to burn your boats on the beach. And the idea of burning your boats on the beach is like, if you think about the explorers of early years, once they arrived at a particular piece of land, they would burn their boats on the beach, because they would say they are committed to this place and to making it work in this place and to figuring things out in this place. And how many times do we burn our boats on the beach? How many times do we go all in and we don't leave parts of ourselves just in case you need to run away, or just in case you need? And I think we see it, for example, in how we in major life transitions. I'll give one example. When we're transitioning from full-time jobs to being full-time entrepreneurs, there's usually always that period where you're not all in, because you haven't fully given yourself into the commitment that you're going to be an entrepreneur. And so we kind of straddle these two worlds for as long as possible. But people who are all in jump in with both feet. And I thought that was really powerful, to ask myself, where are the places where I should be both feet in, but I'm still sort of like just 1 foot in and 1 foot out? And what would it take for me to be not just in, but to be all in? Then the other thing she said is, this one, I don't know, it just got me. But she spoke about this idea of knowing when your leadership is required. And I think we often miss that, because when we don't think that what the world needs is us right now, then you've completely missed it. You've missed the boat, you've missed the opportunity altogether. And Sammy, I love the fact that you're picking up burning the ships, burning the boats on the beach, because I think, you can't do half-assed entrepreneurship, if I can put it like that. But knowing the moment when your leadership is required, knowing that this is the moment that only you can respond to, only you with your lived experiences, the journey that you've been on, that you're the one who's been called on to stand up and take a stand. And I think we oftentimes miss that, and we don't hear it altogether, because half the time we're looking for other people to do the hard things around us, because we're not willing to be all in and to burn our boats at the beach. So let me move on from her. Another professor came in, can't remember which one this was, and he spoke about how it's okay to learn from people you don't like. And I just remember two people that I won't mention now, two people that I really, really just had a really tough time with them in my life, in my professional life, that is, but quickly learned that the both of them, and they're in different organizations, have probably taught me a lot of what I know today. One of them taught me work ethic. And I remember this particular person, I won't even give the gender if I can, used to work 6 days a week religiously. Zippo says, please mention them. Hi, guys. He used to work 6 days a week religiously. And so what I started doing when I realized that that's what this person was doing is that I would come into the office on Saturday as well. And the person would never talk to me. The person would never acknowledge me. But I was learning for myself that what sometimes it takes is the ability to outwork those around you in order to get ahead and in order to make yourself distinguished amongst those who are not willing to put in the work. So I learned that from this person, and I continue even today to hold on to that. But it was such a beautiful reminder to go back and acknowledge and to realize, as my husband always likes to say, I'm the sum total of all the places that I've been. And that also means I'm the sum total of all the relationships that I've been exposed to. I'm the sum total of all the teachers who have taught me things, even if I don't like that particular teacher in that particular moment. The second person just taught me how to be a bull in a china shop. And it's not always a good thing to be, but this person taught me like how no doesn't exist, how to go after something that I want. And I hated the way they did it. I hated the way they made people feel when they were doing this. And I think this journey was an opportunity to go back and say, what of that will I take and what will I leave behind? And I think that is just really, 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 really important. I can see his beloved says, listening to people we don't like sometimes helps pick up stuff we would have never known. I absolutely agree with you. Chantal says, I also resonate with this. I just remembered a few things I didn't like from my management, and it has built who I am in the corporate space. Absolutely. And I think it gives you the negative frame to also be able to say, this is what I don't want to be, because you have such a visual experience and such a lived and physical experience of what you don't want to be, that it's a constant reminder of how not to be. But I think if we're only looking for lessons from people we like and admire, we're probably missing half of the things, the teachable moments that have come to teach us a couple of things. I want to jump to something because I'm going to forget. So one of the professors, so what they do at Harvard is they give you something, they do everything according to the case method. So basically you get a case study, you read the case study before you arrive at on campus, and oftentimes the case study has a couple of questions you've got to think about. And one of the case studies we got was about, and they're all true, by the way, so these are not made up fictitious stories. One of the case studies was about this banker, and this banker was like at JP Morgan, very successful. Basically built a division of the business that doesn't exist to becoming the biggest in the industry. And this person was untouchable in terms of their performance. However, the feedback that this person was getting from everybody around them, in particular colleagues, not clients, because they knew how to work with clients and to be liked by clients, but the feedback they were getting from colleagues is that this person is toxic, abusive, aggressive, and just an absolute nightmare to work with. So of course, and the question that we are asked as we're reading this is that if this was promotion season, would you promote this person or not? And for me, I was like, such a simple answer. Of course, I'm not going to promote this person. In fact, I might even fire them because I don't want a rotten apple in the cart. And in fact, toxic people often create toxic culture. So you rather lose your superstar and find somebody else who's not a superstar. And so I walked into the lecture very cocky, very clear that I knew the answer. And the lecture was about, why are you guys this person? Why must people survive you as this person? You and your brilliance, and you and your high performingness and your overachievingness and all of these brilliant things that you go out and do in the world, and completely unmindful of how you make people feel in the process, and what disaster and destruction you leave in your wake as you go and achieve goal after goal and goal after goal after goal. How much hurt you bring about in the pursuit of your own achievement and in pursuit of your own goals. You see, I'm even getting teary-eyed again now. It was such a powerful confrontation about the behaviors of high achievers and how sometimes we are completely oblivious to how we make other people feel when we've closed off the world and we're all about the thing that we need to get done and the thing that we need to get under our name. And so one of the one of the examples he used, he said, just think about a continuum from 1 to 10. So numbers 1 here and number 10 here. And he says what high achievers tend to do is actually live in 1 or 10s. It's either because you're doing well, everything's going great, the world is amazing, you're amazing, and nothing can touch you. And then you just wait for one thing to go wrong, whether it's bad feedback from a client, whether it's somebody telling you that they saw somebody who was better than you or somebody you could learn from, and suddenly you're at a 0. And this guy asked us, what is it that makes us so difficult that in the event that we're not front and center, breasting the finish line, you know that thing that when you run the marathon and then you breast the finish line, that's what it's called, I think it is, standing on the top of the podium, that we are unable to regulate just the normalcy of emotions. And I thought, initially I thought, oh my goodness, that's such a huge generalization to make. And then when I started listening to the conversation and quickly realized how much truth was sitting in the behavior of A-type personalities, and how people have to survive us half the time because we're so oblivious sometimes to the destruction and the hurt, the pain we cause in pursuit of being first, of being number one, of being the best, of being the greatest. It was a lot to take in. Eleni, I'm so glad that you're here, and I know that you 100% just get what I'm saying as well. And it made me think about myself and think about how others experience me and think about how I show up and think about how I make others feel. And it's not about being inauthentic and not yourself, but it's about, are you even aware? Because that's the problem. Are you even aware? And then I thought, oh, this guy's going far. And then he asked, how many of you are married? And so up our hands went. And part of the question was, how does your spouse survive you? Whew. Anyway, that was a big one. And we suddenly went into this very big conversation about what it actually takes to be married to an A-type personality and how much grief we probably give our partners in the process. But it was interesting. Let me just say that. I'll leave it at that. Then, the other thing that we spoke about, I want to speak about 2 ideas, being bulletproof and pace and progress. So let me start with pace and progress. One of the leaders we studied is a leader called, let me quickly read Eleni's message. It says, it's the pressure we feel to be brilliant and nothing else matters, because when I feel I'm at a 1 and I'm not a 10, it affects everyone. I can't agree with you more. Khali says, Shoo, I'm going to need to listen to this again and to share with Habi. Please do. So let's talk about pace and progress. So one of the leaders that we studied was Rachel Carson. For those of you who don't know Rachel Carson, she was the lady who blew the whistle and raised the flag on DTTs. Remember, those were the sprays that they were doing over the pesticide sprays over large pieces of land, only to find out, started in the US, spread to other parts of the world, only to find out that lots of people were dying, animals, and so on the back of that. And so she's credited today for being the first person to actually start the environmental movement as we know it, because her work was just so impactful. But here's the thing about Rachel. And as I was reading her case study, I was just so mad at this woman because she was so slow. She was so slow. And, she would write, and her big thing was writing a book that would raise the alarm about the damage we were doing to the environment. But every time she wrote a chapter, she would go and have somebody else read it, and then somebody else give input, and then somebody else edit it, to the extent that it took her years to write this book. Oh, and by the way, she was also sick with cancer during the time, so there were times when she couldn't work, and she had to sleep, and she had to recover. And as I'm reading this thing, I'm like, girl, at this pace, you are not going to have the impact. You've got to do this quickly and before people get onto it. And it just was such a massive confrontation about my relationship with pace and progress. In my world, as an A-type personality and an overachiever, faster is always better. More efficient is always better. Anything that is slow and is meandering and is taking in too much input from everyone, it just frustrates me. And it was such a confrontation to realize that part of what she was doing in making sure that she was slowing herself right down was to ensure that she was bulletproof with what she was then going to put out to the world. And I reflected on that because oftentimes I think as women and Black women, we know that we've got to be bulletproof in what we put out to the world, right? You don't have room for mistakes. You don't have room to fluff it up and to, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to try again. You've got oftentimes that opportunity, and you've got to make every single stage moment, every single camera moment, every single show, every single board meeting, every single presentation, that you've got to really be bulletproof. You've got to have done the reading, you've got to understand everything, you've got to be worked on the questions in advance. And yet at the same time, we also want to do it quickly, because there's this unspoken fear at the back of our voice that says, if you don't do it quickly, you're going to be seen as slow, you're going to be seen as incompetent, somebody's going to do it before you, somebody's going to say it before you. And it was just such a powerful moment for me to come to realization that my relationship with pace and progress was unhealthy, first and foremost, right? There are things that I still have to be bulletproof about, but there are things that I don't. There are moments where my expertise, my 10,000 hours, my reputation, my relationships will carry me without me having to be fixated about being bulletproof. I can be human, and that means imperfect. So this idea of being imperfect, not just as something that rolls off this tongue, but something that's actually true. And at the same time, I don't always have to be fast. That I have the privilege of slowing down the pace, and to understand that you earn the privilege of slowing down pace. When you've done the 10,000 hours, you've put in the work, your brand is there, your reputation is deep, relationships are deep, everybody knows what you're capable of. Slow down. Slow down. Get the input of other people. Give somebody a read through what you're about to put out into the world. Check in with somebody before you put out something that's half-baked. And so for me, that was a massive relief and a release of an unhealthy relationship that I think was keeping me in the hyper-activated space, constantly working, constantly fast, constantly at pace, constantly efficient, that I don't always give myself the opportunity just to go, this one doesn't need to be bulletproof. I just need to show up as myself, and myself is going to be good enough because I've done the work. I've bagged the hours. I've got the relationships. I've got the reputation. It's fine. And knowing when to be bulletproof and when not to be. And knowing when to be fast, and knowing when you have the privilege of slowing down the pace. So there was that. Then I've spoken about pace and bulletproof. Wongega says, if you know your story, you won't need to rush it through in order to share it with the world. I couldn't agree with you more. Then we did a case study about Starbucks. And for those of you who might have followed the Starbucks story, you'll remember that a couple of years ago, they had a big racial incident where a black customer was arrested because he didn't want to order anything. Him and his friend, they didn't want to order anything. They were just chilling, waiting for a meeting. And then a white manager called the cops. And the cops came and they arrested this guy, and it was massive. So that's the case study that we walked in with. And of course, I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is a case study about inclusivity or inclusion and diversity. And it becomes a case study about how to actually lead through a crisis. So when you're in a crisis situation, as a leader, how do you get yourself and your team out of that intact? How do you get everybody home safely, basically? And guys, if I can tell you the number of teary moments in that week, I can't even describe it. And one of the analogies that I thought was really super powerful to think about was to think about yourself as a dinosaur, right? So like really big, and you've got a big tail. And that when you are in crisis and you have whiplash as a leader, the likelihood is that you are going to mess up things in the process. Because if you imagine I have a big tail now, I've got my desk here, I've got my big screen and my laptop, and I've got a microphone. Then if I had a big tail that just did this, I'd wipe everything out in the process of responding. And because as leaders, we respond that way, because not only are we the last to know about things, because oftentimes we're not at the front line. The CEO of Woolies is not packing plastics at your local Woolies. The CEO of Discovery is not camping outside your doctor's office, making sure that you know your medical aid covers fully what it's supposed to do or whatever. Or even worse, if you guys remember the old mutual case during COVID, when a family actually brought an entire dead body in because Old Mutual wasn't wanting to pay out the family. In those moments, as the CEO, you're most likely going to be the last person to know, because the people who experience it first are the people on the front lines. But here's the kicker. You're not only the last person to know, you're the person who's responsible for everything. So how do you reconcile that you're the last person to know, but you're responsible for everything? You're responsible even for the reaction of, I'm going to try and pin Timothy's comment. You're responsible even for the reaction of the person on the front line. What they did is a reflection of how you've led, the values you've instilled, the culture that you've nurtured. So you're responsible for all of it. So how do you make sense all of that? And I mean, we spent 2 hours talking about this, but there's one thing that I just thought was just so important. And it goes counter to everything that we've been learning about leadership, and that is, authentic leadership, speaking from the heart, being vulnerable. And I agree with all of those things, right? But leadership is also about tactical pauses. And that was the big takeaway. When do you know you need a tactical pause? When you are in the midst of crisis as a leader, before you have a dinosaur moment, what you need to exercise is a tactical pause. And in that moment that you create a pause moment, you not only create space to think, but you create space for you to tap into the currency of trust in your organization. To be able to first fully acknowledge that you're the last to know. So you actually don't know what's happened. And to trust that the people on the front line and every other layer after that, who are closer to the situation, not only have the expertise, but also have the judgment call about what do we do in these situations. Because you've set the tone, for the culture, you've set the tone through the values. And so your job as a leader, hear this, in the midst of crisis, hear this, is to be led. Can you imagine that? I feel like I'm having a church moment. Your job as a leader in a crisis moment is to learn to be led, because you're always going to be the last to know. And yet you're the one who's responsible for everything. And the only way you manage something well is if you take a tactical pause, you tap into the trust that exists in the system, and you allow the people that, the smart people, we always say, the best leaders are the ones that are surrounded by people that are smarter than them. Those people, the ones that are smarter than you, you allow them to lead you. Assis Pumezo says, no need to respond fast, slow down and find a clear way out. I love that, because in the absence of, you are not always going to see the clear way out because you're too far from the center. And I think that's like so hard to do, to allow yourself to be led in the midst of a crisis, because we are kind of okay with the idea of allowing ourselves to be led when the stakes are low. But that's actually when the trust in the system is the thing that's going to carry you and the team out. So Timothy says, Starbucks case study is so powerful. I still can't believe that they shut down all their stores in order to address it. They lost millions, but they won so many people back. Absolutely. So I think if you haven't read the case study, please do. Because so one of the things, Timothy, we got to see was some videos of so they shut down all the stores, right? In the US. And then they had diversity and inclusion training for everyone. First problematic thing for me personally, it was that it wasn't mandatory, so it was voluntary, so some people decided to sit it out. But that's not the issue. The issue was that they then showed us what that training was what it looked like, and the kind of things that they did. And I think as a conversation strategist, I just kept seeing so many holes in the process. But nonetheless, it was still a really, really powerful process and a really, really powerful way of winning back their community. So I absolutely agree with you. All right, where am I? Okay, oh my goodness. So, I like a glass of whiskey every now and then, like a little tot of whiskey every now and then. Not often. I'm not a big whiskey drinker, but I do love a little bit of whiskey every now and then. So we had this case study about whiskey, and in particular about a whiskey brand called Uncle Nearest. So did you know that Jack Daniels, for those of you who drink Jack Daniels, that the guy that came up with the combination, the ingredients of Jack Daniels, was actually a slave who worked for Jack Daniels, whose name and was affectionately called Uncle Nearest, right? And so this woman comes across the story in the US, and she goes, no way, no way, that nobody knows about the story. And for all we know, his family probably is not connected to the generational wealth that, the owners of Jack Daniels have been able to realize over time. So she basically goes and finds Uncle Nearest's family and kind of says to them, guys, we need to rectify this. Goes and finds the owners of Jack Daniels and actually is able to convince them to bring Uncle Nearest's family close. What happens is that they end up starting a whiskey called Uncle Nearest. So if I find a bottle, you guys will know. But the reason why the story is so powerful is that the lady, it's a lady, the lady who's done this and now has built $1 billion strong company, is a black, short woman who knew nothing about whiskey, and went on to build $1 billion company and is now building a cognac brand in France as well. Now, why am I telling you this story? She joined our class. So the founder of Uncle Nearest joined our class. She joined us online, and we were able to speak to her about, like, where did you get the audacity, like, to even think that you could do something like this? And there's certain things she shared that I just thought, as a black woman, I've got to share this. Somebody asked her, how do you overcome the disadvantage of being a black woman? And she said, being a black woman is my greatest weapon. They don't see me coming. They don't expect me to be great. They don't expect me to have the industry knowledge that I have. They don't expect the track record that I have. They don't expect the curiosity. They don't expect the questions. And she says, and because I'm different, I look different, I sound different, I dress different, I just need to say my name once and they will remember me. I don't have to do anything else. And I was just so taken by that, because I think we're so used to talking about our blackness, especially South Africans, talking about our blackness as a disadvantage, especially in non-black spaces where you're the only black person there, or you're one of few black people there, or even as a woman. We talk about being women in male-dominated spaces. Yes, it's not structurally good and we need to change that. But while you're there, don't speak a negative narrative into that. That is a weapon. That is a strength. You need only say one thing, because you're the only woman there, because you're the only black person there, because you're the only black woman there. The likelihood that what you say will be recorded and remembered is so much more than if another white man in a navy suit had opened his mouth. So we've got to think strategically about how you use your form of being black and being feminine and being a woman, all the way to how you dress and how you show up in those spaces so that you are memorable, that you make it difficult for people to forget you. One of the things that she used to do is that when she used to call investors and they would immediately hear that she's a woman, she was like, oh, okay, cool. So she got her husband to make the calls. And for me, that just spoke to this idea of be relentless in making a plan. You know, in South Africa, we always say a boer maak 'n plan. That's who we are. We work around things. We make plans. We figure things out. And it just struck me that we sometimes undervalue the idea of just being resourceful, making things work with what you have, finding a workaround. And rather than sitting back in the, oh, woe is me, I'm black, oh, woe is me, I'm a woman, oh, blow me, I'm the only person here. How do you make that count so that it becomes the weapon that only you have access to, that they cannot duplicate, that they cannot reach out for because they just don't have it? And imagine if we were able to think in that way, as we went and broke down doors and stepped into spaces where people like us don't always get an opportunity to be in. And I just thought I loved that. The other thing she spoke about that I loved was this, somebody said to her, what about the voice of fear, you know? And she said, look, be honest, I'm not fearless. There are certain things that I'm scared of, that scare me, that overwhelm me, that make me think like, oh my goodness, why would I think I'm capable of doing that? And she says, however, that being said, fear is always with me because I'm always doing big things. But fear sits in the backseat and I drive. And I just thought, you know, I wanted to give her a standing ovation right there and then. Because I think sometimes we do this with imposter syndrome as well, is that we don't always want to acknowledge the fact that this thing is not going away. Because the more you do, the scarier it's going to get. The more you do, the louder the voice of imposter syndrome, right? And the opportunity is to acknowledge it, but to make sure that it doesn't then take over your dreams, your ambition, your work, your focus, your action plan, and that you stay in the driving seat, even if it's sitting at the back. And what it made me do, by the way, is it reminded me of something that I can't talk about today because we just don't have time, but I'm going to try and speak about it maybe next week sometime. And it's a talk that Reshma Sojan, Timothy, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Reshma Sojan, she's the first Indian American to run for US Congress. And she was giving a graduation speech at one of the colleges, I think at Smith in the US. And she was talking about how imposter syndrome is a made up psychological tool to keep women in their place. And it's a 22-minute talk. I'll post it in my stories so you can see it. And she starts, when she starts talking about imposter syndrome, she says, this is the last time I'm going to answer a question from somebody who asked me how I deal with imposter syndrome. Because I'm not going to spend time speaking about something that is fake and that has been architectured for my repression. And she goes on to break down why imposter syndrome is a literal psychological tool that keeps women preoccupied about the things they should be worried about instead of just getting on and getting the job done. I can't talk about it right now, but if there's one thing that was big for me and was linked to meeting the lady from Uncle Nearest, I think it was exactly that. So I've got a few more minutes, so I want to talk about let me see of all the things that okay, you're not gonna like this, guys, but let me read Grace's comment first. Grace says, the thought of always finding a workaround has always helped me step into spaces that I never imagined that I would. Absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense. I want to spend the last 5 minutes because Akere, I told you when I started, I'm busy cooking bones inside. So it's cold in Johannesburg. We eat bones and steamed bread when it's cold in this family. So my pressure cooker is going, and I need to go in at 5 minutes at 5:02. But before I go, I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people are not going to like. Me, I loved it. So you'll have to forgive me. So we're talking about what is resilience and what does it actually look like in a leader. And one of the professors introduced us to this idea of the resilience ladder. And the idea that resilience is not about being stoic. Being stoic is this idea that you are strong and you're going to get through anything, right? But rather that resilience was about the ability to find your feet and to find grounding in the most uncertain moments. Yamkela is asking for the imposter syndrome lady. Her name is Reshma Sojourn. Reshma, Reshma. Sojourn is Saujaun. I hope you got that, right? And so resilience is about this ability to find grounding in the most uncertain times. Now, when we have our feet on the ground, that is when we are able to have better clarity of what's going on around us. And when we have clarity, that's when you begin to see the opportunity to exploit the moment so that the crisis becomes an opportunity. And resilience is about being able to make that transition from being stuck in something to making something work for you, right? And so we're all like, yeah, but sounds great, but how does it work, right? And she says, okay, well, think about it like this. Think about it as a ladder. When something bad is happening, the first thing we want to do is either to avoid it or to deny that it's happening. And I remembered thinking about COVID as I watched all of my clients, because I usually get booked up a year in advance, and just watching all my clients cancel. Postpone, cancel, postpone, cancel, propose. And literally watching my pipeline of work go from being very fat to zero, right? And wanting to think to myself as that was happening that, no, this is not happening. Like something's gonna happen, like this doesn't make sense. After all this work of like dedicating my entire life to this, it cannot be that this is what's happening. So the first level is avoidance, right? Or denial. Then you begin to go, okay, how am I going to survive this, right? So, and that was probably, that was probably my next reaction as well. So, okay, fine. I'm seeing the cancellations. I'm seeing the postponements. How am I going to survive this now with no income? How do I pivot? What am I going to find? Is there anything else that I can look for that would allow me to earn an income? From survival, you then go to coping. So once you started to figure out how do you survive something, you start coping with it. It's not nice, it's not comfortable, but you start going, okay, I can cope if I do this. It's the making the plan. If I do this, I can survive. If I do this, I can still get an income. After coping, you get to the breakthrough. This is where the breakthrough starts happening. You start managing a situation. So I now know if I do this, this is what's going to happen. And so I begin to allocate my time and my resources towards a particular outcome. And the last layer of the ladder is the harnessing. And that's when you take a bad situation and you make it work. Back to my story. When I tell you that during COVID-19, we as a business, as the conversation strategists, were able to make 3 times as much money than we've made outside of COVID. Okay? And you might say, oh, but how? So here's the thing. I have to travel to a lot of my clients, and often my clients are out of the country. During COVID, I could be in 3 continents in one day, right? So avoidance and denial was my first step. I didn't want to believe what was happening at all, right? The second step was surviving. I was trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? I started even thinking about teaching online because I'm like, I'm a great teacher. I'm going to survive this. I'm going to figure it out. But slowly started realizing that, one, I started going back to, I had some clients in the academic space that wanted me to begin to teach online in the executive leadership programs, and I started doing that. Then I realized, no, I can cope with this, because suddenly some clients are saying, what if we do a virtual meeting here? What if we do a virtual conference here? And I began to make adjustments to be able to cope. When we started managing it is when we would then say to clients, if you're looking for a moderator who is digitally fluent, and that wasn't something that we had even thought about as a skill at the time, that is digitally fluent, that works across technical platforms, can be in any part of the world at a click of a button. We're the people that you're looking for. And last but not least, beginning to use COVID as a breakthrough to start working in the East, so that we'd wake up with clients in Japan, in India. During the day, I would service a client in Europe or in Africa. And at around 4 or 5, I'd begin to engage my clients in the US. That's when you begin to make a bad situation work for you. That is resilience. Resilience is not about being stoic. It's not about getting through in one piece and then breathing at the end of it. It is about being in a crappy situation and turning that crappy situation into a superpower, because you've had the ability to go up the ladder. You've not only moved from trying to avoid the situation, you've transcended trying to just survive the situation. You've now tried to figure out not only how do you cope, but how do you manage the situation, and beyond managing the situation, how do you make the hardship work for you? That is resilience. That is the ability to turn a bad situation into an advantageous one. And that's what resilient leaders do. They don't survive things. They don't survive things. They make the bad moments count. So last comment on this, which actually just reminded me of this. I hadn't written it down. There's a piece of work, and I'm gonna ask Ndru and my team to please remind me of this. There's a piece of work by Jim Collins called Who Luck. No, it's not the Who Luck one. It's called return on luck. You know how you have return on investment and you have return on equity and all of those amazing things? Have you thought about return on luck? So this idea that we have both good luck and bad luck moments in life, and we don't have control over the things that are going to be good luck, breakthroughs, unexpected good fortune, just as much as we don't have control over bad luck moments. The things that are going to come and present as challenges and are going to put us on the back foot. However, if you have the ability to go up the resilience ladder, your return on luck, and that means your ability to take a good situation and make it great, and your ability to take a bad situation and make that great, that is your measure of return on luck. And Jim Collins writes about this extensively. He started, I got so scared, I thought I saw something. He wrote about this a long time ago. I think it's in his book, Good to Great and Great by Choice, one of the two. But go and read up on the concept of return on luck. And I think I hadn't thought about it then, but it's clicking for me now that is probably a metric of success that we're missing. We talk about return of equity, we talk about return on investment, we don't talk about return on luck. It's called ROLing something. It's returning on lucking something. Whether it's good luck or bad luck, how you show up in the moment of luck, good luck or bad luck, determines what happens at the back of that. So that's my story. Guys, I literally couldn't even go through all of my notes. I just thought, let me just pick up the first couple of pages. Maybe at another time we can do a little bit more. But I just thought, let me share this. And I think a lot of you will probably remember my personal story, that I've always wanted to go to Harvard. Always wanted to go to Harvard. And I used to tell my mom all the time that, one day I'm going to go to Harvard, one day I'm going to go to Harvard. And in fact, that one day I would go and teach at Harvard, that one of my dreams is to stand in front of that class and actually teach something. And, she used to buy into every dream that I used to have. And I know she still does as well now. And she would always get the Harvard part wrong, and she'd also say Havana. So she'd always just tell people, who knows where Havana? Nosi's going to Havana, Nosi's going to Havana. And it was always this thing, and I'm like rolling my eyes. I'm like, please stop. It's not Havana, it's Harvard. People won't know what you're talking about. But here we are. And we've been to Havana and back. And I just thought, let me share some of the things that have moved me. Let me share some of the things that have just absolutely touched me in so many ways. It's not even half of it, but I was just moved, and I can't explain it. And I see a lot of you want me to talk about the imposter syndrome video. What I will do, I will share it in my stories, and then next week I will talk about it, because it's so powerful. The next time somebody asks me about imposter syndrome, just like Reshma, the first thing that's going to come out of my mouth is, I'm not talking about imposter syndrome, because it's not real. It's not real. Okay, I'm gone, guys. I'm going back to my bones to go and finish cooking for my family. Thank goodness for pressure cookers. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for entertaining my story of my journey and what it was like. I feel like there were so many people who sent me so many beautiful messages wishing me well, and I really appreciate that. We've been to Havana, guys, and we're back from Havana. So now we've done the first part of the dream. Now you know. We got to go back for the second part. When we go back and we're standing in front of the class and we're giving the lecture, I know that it will be a moment for all of us. So thank you so much, and have a good evening. Lots of love. Thank you for joining. So many amazing people who are here as well. Thank you. I appreciate all of your support, guys.